Living in the Sunshine State, solar energy and solar power is a huge topic. I was so fortunate to have local expert Gabby Shapiro from Enlight Energy to come and chat with me about the basics of solar and what you need to know. But in today's video, we're going to tackle the real estate side of it. If you own a home and you put solar panels on it, how do you go about selling it? Is it a detriment? And what exactly is the return on investment for your solar panels? So thank you for being here again, Gabby. So thrilled to have you. For those that maybe missed the first video or don't know you, can you just kind of run through your experience and your credentials when it comes to solar?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a solar consultant since 2020 and then shifted from solar sales over to real estate.
And I think they really go hand in hand. And there's so many levels to this that are deep and confusing. So let's backtrack to the homeowner who's putting on solar, knowing that they're going to be selling their house eventually.
I would off the bat just say, have a clear idea of what your goals are. Solar often makes the most sense for people who are going to be in the home long-term and get the full long-term benefits of that system. However, if you think that you might be moving in the next couple years, but you still want to go solar, my advice is to not go overboard with the size of the system.
So how do you know the right size? What determines that?
Most often people are looking for 100% offset, meaning they're trying to replace all of their energy bill with solar producing that energy that they would otherwise be buying. If 100% offset means that you're going to have a giant system, if it's above $50,000 or $60,000, it might be hard to make up that amount in the sales price. But if you do go with a partial offset, a $15,000 to $30,000, maybe even $40,000 system, that is a bit more of a realistic number that you can bump your home's price tag and be able to pay off whatever's left on your solar financing and kind of get that value bump from having the solar.
If you're doing the financing, does it have to be paid off at closing so you're hoping you have enough value in your home, or does it get transferred to a buyer? How does that work?
So you actually do have both options. In most cases, it is a transferable or an assumable loan that the buyer can take on, and that way the buyer can replace their electric bill with that same fixed solar financing. As long as that buyer qualifies, generally the terms are going to stay the same. It is just like any assumable loan, the buyer would get the same terms.
So talk about value. A lot of sellers think, oh, I have solar on the house. That's going to bump up my price by a whole lot. But in the same respect, in a transaction, a lot of appraisers don't actually give solar a huge value. So how do you navigate that if you're thinking of doing solar?
So that's a really fascinating question. And there are some studies out there, some run by, there was like a Department of Energy study earlier in the 2000s. And more recently, there was a Zillow study showing that homes with solar got a pretty decent bump in their value. As real estate professionals, we know that there's no blanket statements, right? Real estate is very local. So consulting with a real estate professional is a really great idea to get a sense of what value it can add in your neighborhood, because we base our values on comparable sales. So oftentimes if there are other comparable sales with solar, that is going to make it easier to justify that boost in equity for the home.
If I have somebody who wants to buy a house, one of the questions I'm always asking is, what's your goal for the property? How long are you going to be holding it? Is there a similar line for solar? Like if you're going to put on solar, you should plan to not have to sell for X amount of years. Now, life circumstances change, but what's that general goal of like your best time frame?
That's kind of hard to put a number on. I would say it really has more to do with how much is the balance of that loan. Unfortunately, appraisers don't give it a ton of value when they're doing their formal assessments.
Right.
I've been told that they'll give it 7 years worth of savings. The average time someone is spending, living in a home is about 7 years. How much is that going to save them? So they'll consider it that way. Again, if you have a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 solar system, that's when it gets a little bit tough. They're not going to give it anywhere near that much value.
Would you say that this is accurate? That if you're going to add solar, it should be because you personally want it, not because you think it's going to increase the value as a selling point?
Yes. Yeah, the adding value should not be the sole reason why you go solar. There are lots of benefits, the cost savings, the environmental concerns, if you're looking for backup power. Some people want it just to have more control over the bill. Having a solar system, you start to see exactly what you're producing and exactly what you're using. So no more estimated bills from GRU.
Man. And so the beauty of your position is not only are you a solar expert, but you're also a fellow KW Realtor, so you really understand both sides. How are you suggesting that your sellers market their property if they have solar panels?
So having solar can be a little bit polarizing. It's like having a house with a pool. If someone is looking for a house with a pool, they're going to be psyched, and it's going to be a huge benefit to them. If they are not particularly looking for a pool, but they do love the house, they might see that pool as an added liability. So my advice is to talk to a realtor who has experience selling homes with solar and knows how to promote that system along with the house itself. Something I do for my listings with solar is to basically create a pamphlet to try to give as much information as I possibly can. Here is how much the system is going to produce. Here is the cost that that is replacing. Here are the warranties that will be transferring. And then on the listing side, deciding what is the best strategy for that seller. Does it make more sense to bump the price a little bit and pay off the system when the home sells? Or do you price a little bit lower and advertise the assumable loan? In many cases, the solar loans have 2, 3, or 4% interest. So that may be a huge benefit to a buyer who's looking at the house.
So we get a buyer who comes to a listing with solar, and I've heard it, I know you have, hey, I love this house, but can they just take the solar panels away? Can you? How does that work? Like, I've signed up for this 20-year loan.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that?
In theory, they could. In practice, it is very impractical. They are a fixture. They're mounted to the house. They're wired into the electric panel. While they could, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to do that.
And if they did, I have a loan that's got 20 years left on it. I have a buyer who wants them taken off. I take them off and just keep paying on said loan, or pay it off completely when I sell the house.
Yes.
There's no discount because I only used them for 5 years instead of 25.
No, there may be some situations if you are leasing the panels, they may offer a buyout at a certain time. So that may be one of the advantages of a lease, but it depends on the program.
Sure. So when it comes to the installation, is it all included where I hire a solar company, I pay them, I give them access to my house, and then they leave and I just flip my lights on?
People often expect it to be very quick, but we say it's not an event, it's a process. So the process starts with the consultation, looking at your energy needs and getting an estimate of your cost savings and sizing the system properly and seeing how much that will cost. If you decide to move forward with that system, then you would sign an install agreement, qualify for the financing if there's financing involved. Then from there, the solar company is probably going to do a more formal survey. They're going to send someone from their install crew or an engineer to go out and verify everything that was in that digital proposal, to double check the condition of the roof, double check the light conditions, the angles of everything, and verify everything that you've gone over in the consultation. From there, they're going to create a very detailed plan set. So they actually have to have electrical engineering drawings, blueprints of how everything is going to be mounted and installed and wired, because this is a pretty major upgrade, and it's also connecting into the utility meter. So this has to get permitted with the utility company and also with the local municipality or jurisdiction, whether you're county or city, whoever is kind of in charge of that permitting for your home. That alone, that permitting process, can take several months. So that's often where we see some delays. So some of the biggest complaints that solar companies get are, hey, I signed up and nothing's happening.
Just waiting on the county or the city.
Yeah. Once you're permitted, install crew will come out and do the actual work, prepping the roof with the mounting brackets, installing the inverter box, and then mounting the panels and wiring everything together. The install is typically 1 day for the panels to get installed, and then if there's a battery involved, another day for the battery install. This is the second time when a lot of solar companies or solar reps get into trouble because their customers will get installed and then the system's not running yet. Actually, it will take often several more weeks after the install. There needs to be a permit inspection and an inspection by the utility company to make sure that everything was done according to the plan set and that it is ready to be connected to the grid. The system won't start running until you get what's called permission to operate, or PTO. That's when they're going to install the bidirectional meter that allows you to send energy to the utility company, and that's what allows you to actually run the system. So start to finish, it can be a 3 to 6 month process.
Wow, it's managing expectations. If I know that going in, then I'm not ticked at you on week 3, you know? What happens if it's cloudy for several days? Do I lose my refrigerator and my air conditioning?
Absolutely not. You're still connected to the grid. So anytime your house needs more energy than the panels are producing, you can still take advantage of energy from the grid. When we do a consultation and we look at a solar proposal, our software actually looks at weather models for this area. So we are taking into account how many sunny days, how many cloudy days we're going to see, and we're looking at things on an annual basis.
The next thing that pops into my mind is homeowners associations, HOAs. They all have various rules. I have a neighbor, and he told me that solar panels and just different things he's done with his yard that are against the HOA rules, because they're for environmental purposes, the HOA can't block it. So do you know anything about that?
That's genius. I believe he is correct. My understanding is also that HOAs are not allowed to block solar installs on residential homes. I believe that's statewide.
Man, all the HOA boards everywhere are going to despise us both.
They shouldn't be able to block you from doing something that is going to benefit both you and the environment.
Agreed. So it would not be a real estate video in Florida if we did not discuss insurance. Do you have any tips, or are there any things that you're seeing in the solar world when it comes to insurance, especially in relation to roofs, because they've gotten really, really strict about roofs?
Yeah, I have heard some stories of insurance companies saying, hey, you know, we're not going to cover you anymore. However, none of my customers have experienced that. Fortunately, a lot of things, especially I've found this with the insurance world, can be solved by shopping around a few different insurance companies. It is a great idea to match the age of your roof to the solar install. So if it's time for a new roof, it's a great time to consider adding solar once you do put on the new roof. We do have roofers that we work with. It can be a package deal, and you can finance both together, the roof and the solar. If you do need to re-roof, our company and many solar companies will do an uninstall and reinstall. So basically taking the panels down, allowing the roofers to re-shingle, and then resetting everything up again.
What does that cost if you have to have an uninstall and a reinstall?
That varies. I believe right now it's around $200 per panel.
Okay.
But again,
Yeah,
I don't know about that.
We're not going to
number.
hold you to it, but just to know roughly what we're looking at if that's something that has to happen.
Yeah, you do want to make sure that you have coverage that is going to cover your panels. Most often, that takes the form of just increasing the amount of coverage that you have for your home, and that is usually a very small price increase for the year. Say you have a $400,000 house and you're putting on a $25,000 solar system, you're going to want to make sure that you have coverage for at least $425,000.
And so worth that little tiny bump in the event that, you know, a hurricane rips them off in a storm or something.
One thing that people don't think about as often is the panels are actually incredibly durable. So they are adding a layer of protection to your roof in some ways.
I'd never thought of it that way. So let's talk about the maintenance of it. As a homeowner, what am I signing up for in terms of maintenance?
One of the beautiful parts about going solar is there are no moving parts. With solar, it literally just sits there and does its job. So they have really incredible longevity. The only maintenance that we'd recommend is once a year cleaning your panels, because there's going to be dust and pollen that builds up once a year, just getting them.
Like just with like a hose?
Yeah, soft wash, or with a hose, or get a giant squeegee.
Perfect. So I think one of the biggest things we really haven't touched on yet, which is a large reason to think about solar, are the environmental impacts. So do you have some more knowledge that you can share about the benefits of going through the solar installation?
So a typical solar install will offset 6 tons of carbon, and it's kind of the equivalent of planting 212 trees.
Per solar install? Mm-hmm. Wow.
As long as that system is running, it is offsetting carbon being burned to create that energy. It's providing an alternative, clean, and renewable energy source.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this, because it is of such great value. And I think there's just not enough of this information out there.
Thanks. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's such a joy to talk about it. I mean, it's so misunderstood. And so my recommendation, if you do have a home with solar and it comes time to sell, I would say choose your realtor very carefully, and make sure that they are someone who's going to have the knowledge and experience either selling homes with solar or experience in the solar world, so that they know how to promote it to potential buyers.
So if you found the immense amount of value that I have from Gabby today, you can connect with him directly, because he can do a consultation if you're curious about solar. His website is GabbySolarShapiro.com. And if you've got real estate questions, or even if you have a particular video you'd like me to do, I am always open for ideas. So down in the description, click on the link. We can set up a discovery call, because I'd love to chat with you. My goal is always to provide value and to help educate, because I think when you're trying to navigate the real estate space, there are so many potential gaps and pitfalls. And just like today's conversation about solar has been so illuminating, forgive me the pun, I've got some great information that's happening in the state of Florida that's about to change your HOA. I'm Lindsey Johnson, your resource for all things real estate. See you next time.